Cool. So I'm from the Bullperk decentralized VC. So basically, what we are doing, we interested into the token for the like seed, pre-seed rounds, and IDO. And let's first start from short introduction of everyone. Michelle.
Sure. Hi. Really lovely to be here, everybody. My name is Michelle Chivunga. I'm the CEO of Global Policy House, which is a fintech and investment company that is based in the UK. We really focus around looking at blockchain and fintech projects across the world, particularly in emerging markets. Africa is a particular, a huge market for us, as well as Asia. And of course, we're also considering expanding into the Middle East as well. So thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. My name is Elena Astor. I'm CEO of Astor Venture Capital. So we are traditional VC that focus on energy, transportation, education, space industries. And we also are looking for fintech, startups, blockchain, and DeFi. So we are working closely with UAE program on artificial intelligence strategy and looking for the projects that combine both AI and blockchain technologies. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Juan Lee. I'm the founder of NextChange. We are an ecosystem-driven venture builder. And also, I have a family office called Arrakis Ventures.
Okay, thank you. So right now, everyone knows about the news that we have right now. We are kind of like at the little bit bear market. So let's start from projections, because we wanted to see some optimistic projections maybe. So everyone will be more fascinated about the future, because bull market is already like in place, and it's not only related to crypto. I think what I see, like in US, I'm from Los Angeles, the stock market, like SPAC, it's really like rocketing right now. We're in the bubble market, and crypto is only like a small piece. And 8% of the all Bitcoins, it's on the balance sheet of public companies in the US. So it means that in spite that we are at the end of the 4-year cycle for Bitcoin, it will be like different game by the end of this year. And it should not be like the same as 4 years ago. So what is your projection for this year in terms of the investment for the short and the long term?
Yeah. Sure. No, great question. I think in terms of projections, really, if we're talking more broadly around investments in the blockchain ecosystem, there's massive potential. I think, there's predictions of about, 16 billion investment to go into blockchain by 2023. So it's a market that's really not going anywhere. In general, I think when you're looking at digital assets as a whole, we're seeing a lot of growth within the digital asset space. Bitcoin, of course, is getting quite a lot of recognition now, especially by institutional players. So the more and more you see more institutional players coming into the, the digital asset marketplace, I think you're going to see quite a lot of growth over time. And a lot of investments are also going to be channeled that way. For us, we're really excited about the space, because I think there's massive opportunity to actually invest, especially in markets where there's less established activity around things like cryptocurrencies. So in the African market, for example, Nigeria, take Nigeria for example, is a very very heavy crypto market, and it's growing quite heavily, and there's massive potential for that continent, I think, to start to untap wealth and value from digital assets. So in terms of projections, I think I see quite potential for lots of growth. But we're going to see, of course, shifts, I think, by institutional players who will come in and really sort of tilt the ball a little bit, I think.
I think that now it's like bear strategy, but as according to the long-term perspective, the market will getting higher. So yeah, that's it.
This is a growth cyclical, and it always go up and always go down. I mean, this is not a industry that grows in a very straight trajectory. So don't know where the top is, but we definitely are, I don't think this is the top, and we are just correcting. I believe that we will probably go up a little bit higher on this, but in the end, it doesn't matter that institutions come in. I've been an institutional investor for 30 years, and every growth cyclical, it doesn't matter how much institutional demand there is, always goes down when the cyclical top hits. But if you look at it from a long term, it will go straight up, but it'll just go in a wave pattern.
Thank you. So, Michelle, a question for you. I was in Kenya and Tanzania in February, and we spoke with like government about the approach for tokenization, and everyone knows that there are a lot of like gold mines in Africa, and in past like currency were like baked by gold. And I see that there are a lot of like underground work between the government to come up maybe with something not like what is like euro, like in EU, but kind of similar model. And in terms of the investment, like gold is always gold. You know, from the history, from many like civilizations and generation, whenever like country or civilization or like region introduce like gold-based currency, like the economy is growing, just like statistic. Like you just go like verify a number for recent like 7,000 of euros is the same. And what I see like potentially like in Africa is that all the gold mines it can be like tokenized somehow. And also I heard about like free trade agreements that should happen soon. Could you please elaborate on this in terms of like opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, fantastic question. Africa is really shifting. I'll start with the free trade agreement that you mentioned. So Africa has pretty much formed a single union now. You know, this is with 55 African countries, where we want to encourage a lot more intra-regional trade across African countries. And this is really going to boost productivity and industrialization across the continent. You know, so there's massive opportunities, I think, to do business in the continent. You know, countries trading with each other within Africa, but also opportunities for massive cross-border interactions, right? And lots of opportunities for countries outside of Africa to come into Africa, right? In a safe environment where you can do business and you can trade. You know, Africa, for me, I see as the next sort of growth continent. It's a very young continent, lots of young people, lots of young creative minds. And certainly even within the sort of cryptocurrency space, a lot of the young people are the developers that we're starting to see. Nigeria is producing quite a lot of talent at the moment, especially around developers. So with the free trade area, really, it's more of an opportunity, almost a policy shift, very significant policy shift that will carry Africa forward to the next growth stage. And will encourage a lot more, you know, sort of homegrown investment activity to actually take place. And will also open up the doors, you know, for international engagement with the continent where you can come in and, you know, with less risk, you know, with that perception of risk with the continent. And I'm sitting with the African Union and we're working with the African Union to really, you know, boost activity within the continent and encourage more investment. So I do really urge everybody and many governments around the world to actually interact with Africa because Africa is open for business. And Africa, as you say, is very rich in natural resources. And I think with technology, there's massive opportunities to actually really take advantage of that and start to build wealth, right? So you start to think about tokenization. We're starting to think about opening up opportunities for decentralized finance, for example, as we've heard already. NFTs, again, we've got Africa's quite creative, right? We've got lots of artists and musicians. Nigeria alone, you know, you have the Afrobeat scene. We've got Nollywood, which is equivalent to your Hollywood, you know, so a lot of that is very untapped at the moment. So there's a lot of opportunities for growth. So certainly, yes, I think with the natural resources, we can start to see a better auditability of those assets, right? And we can start to tokenize those assets and actually untap access to wealth and value. And then also it opens up opportunities for international business opportunities where international investors can also be reassured that they're operating in a market where there's greater transparency and greater trust, which again, you know, blockchain really brings in very strongly.
Yeah, thank you a lot. So, and taking about this like NFT like side that is like also on the hype right now, I spoke with one of the project here yesterday, and what they shared, I didn't know before that here land registry is already on the blockchain. And in real estate, let's say like in US, people usually tokenize like future revenue, but people here can tokenize actual like property and do like, you know, like the same as like art tokenization when you have like some pieces. And my question for you, like, in terms of, let's say, your previous experience from institutional investment, because you see like real estate, it's like traditional like assets for the wealth management. Like here, it will be like kind of skyrocketing because you can like put everything on blockchain and then you can upsell for the outside, all the like real estate. I think it's only in the free zone where people can invest, but it's all the land registered, like titles, it's already on the blockchain here. And people are doing here like wealth management for this like real estate, like fractional ownership, all of this stuff, it's already.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever tried to tokenize real estate, you'll come to a very different conclusion. We're very premature still, I think. If you look at the actual issuance, secondary market, the people in place, licenses, when you think about tokenization of real estate, you're talking about STOs. And the regulations, there's very few licenses available, and the secondary market is very thin. So if you look at the history so far, it's been a complete flop, in my opinion. So what you have to look at is this ecosystem has to mature more. And that's why a lot of the large players aren't actually involved, because there's no liquidity in the secondary market. When you see the issuance, they're esoteric companies. So there's not a lot of large companies putting out prime real estate because they're fear of headline risk at this point. I think we're a little bit early. In the last cycle, everybody talked about real estate tokenization as one of the most promising things. And I think it will be in the long term. But right now, the infrastructure is not there, the licensing is not there. And really, who's buying this on the secondary market?
Yeah, I see. But from technological point of view, you see, like let's say in US, like you cannot do like tokenization of real estate. You tokenize it future revenue of the entity, because like you cannot have land registry. But whenever all this registry will be moved, and I know, let's say some of the countries already moving this registry, in Kenya when we spoke, they really want this to prevent corruptions. So there will be no duplicates and there are no conflicts, because all the registry can be basically on the blockchain. And then once it's on the blockchain, you can sell pieces of this. And then it's more about democratization of investments, because in some countries, people cannot afford to invest on a, let's say, public market, but it's too late. The best gain you have when you are early. And I know Alena, she's more focused on the pre-seed, seed stage. And what do you think about exposing this? Because usually you see angel investor, it's more professional job. But what about public market accessing, let's say, early stages?
Yeah, I want to tell a little bit about real estate. So I agree that now the market is not ready according to the regulations. But I want to tell about one example. So Russian billionaire Potanin, he's a big holder of heavy metals, and they're now building crypto exchange, the US market that will add these active heavy metals. And I think that these crypto exchanges will be the next trend, because people from the real estate capital, who are not yet involved in this tokenomic activity, they wanna have some guarantees, and the real metal can be this kind of guarantee. So I see a lot of perspectives in this direction of new type of blockchain projects. And according to the early stage projects, so we focus mainly on technologies and innovations that can change this area in 5-10 years perspective. So first of all, of course, we are looking for strong teams that understanding what they're doing, and not in the short perspective, not in this high-peak trends or something, but in long-term perspectives, of course, because the program of US Strategy of Artificial Intelligence 2031, it is focused on reducing costs for 50% in different spheres, yeah. And so all AI, it's about this right now. So optimization, yeah. So the next trend of 10 years will be optimization. So blockchain for early stage and seed stage projects is mostly about technologies and innovations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, also good question that I personally face it about, during this bull markets in 17, it's about people want to exit sometime quickly, and sometimes investors are playing against the projects when they dump the token. That's why you see there is always question about whether you marry the project, and then if you dump the project, whether you're an investor or you're like playing against the project itself. And liquidity, when people invest directly into the token and they don't have like vesting schedule, and when project is listed on exchanges, sometimes investors like dump this. Who wanna pick the question? Because it's really the problem in the industry.
I can tell the problem of this kind of type of investors that like this easy coming, easy going stuff, that they think shortly. I know very few investors who shortly, in the short period, raised a lot of money and then invested in long-term perspective. And the investor who can be like for 3-5 years. For example, first of my LPs, they invested in Bitcoin when it was like $2,000, and they came out when it was like 60. So they raised $1.5 million, and now they invest in green mining. So this kind of new trend. I think that if you can make this money shortly and invest in long-term perspective, so that's the gift for you, gift of wisdom.
Sure. No, I mean, I was just going to talk more in general around, you know, when we're talking about investments, right, and different asset classes, I think, you know, it's really important to start thinking a little bit broader than, you know, whether it's we're going to see large exits or not. I think what we're starting to see in the market now is that genuine interest in the blockchain space, right? And really starting to understand, actually, this is an industry that is potentially going to be the next growth industry. And lots of investors now are starting to pay attention to the industry, which I think is also an opportunity for adoption to start to take place on a more wider scale, right? And again, you know, shifting away, if you're going to look at it more from a global perspective, it's also about, if you know, again, back to Africa, where a lot of people are starting to discover actually this another place where, you know, I can start to look at this as a reserve opportunity, right? I can place my assets somewhere else, right? Especially when you have currency challenges, right, and depreciations around currency, and there isn't very strong currency. We start to talk about things like stable coins, right, and opportunity to utilize stable coins. And I think that's going to only grow, right, because we're going to start seeing a lot more usage of stable coins. But then, of course, you know, around the world, you know, even central banks are starting to get excited about innovation and technology, you know, and starting to explore digital currency. And I think, again, digital currency is going to play a major role in terms of shifting the trajectory within this space. So when you have, you know, big central banks around the world who are starting to explore, actually, how can we digitize currency, and how can we ensure that we have programmable money that maybe we can start to utilize across the continent, so we don't almost kind of miss out on what's happening within the innovation space. I think is going to shift things a little bit, right? So in general, as you know, within the sort of investment trends that we are starting to explore within this space, you're going to start to see a lot of innovation actually starting to happen, and around the world. Even here, you know, Dubai is a really great example of where innovation is starting to happen on a wider scale, and there's lots of, you know, opportunity for talent to also to develop, right? You've got youth and young people who are starting to learn about these technologies and actually changing their lives. You know, in many parts of the world, developing economies, many, you know, young talent is starting to create their own wealth. You know, and are starting to discover the opportunities that, for example, cryptocurrency offers in order for them to access wealth, in order for them to create new job opportunities by themselves. So that's quite exciting. And I think for us, our investment interest really is more around impact and sustainability driven, even within the crypto space, right? I know there's a lot of bashing that goes on around how Bitcoin is not a friendly sort of, you know, a space to invest in. But at the end of the day, I think it creates opportunity. And it's actually quite inclusive as well, right? But the fact that it's inclusive offers an opportunity for especially young people and women to be able to start to create access to wealth for themselves, which I think is absolutely exciting. And we want to try and look at investing into that. And then, of course, at a policy level, at a government level, it's very important, I think, for governments around the world to start to really engage within the space and understand how the space is operating in order for them to bring in some reasonable regulation, because we do need a certain level of regulation to protect consumers, to protect even innovators who are in this space. So absolutely fundamental space. And I think you're going to see a lot of growth within the investment space in general.
I just want to make a comment about market structure. I think this is important. If you look at most crypto hedge funds, they're like less than $10 million. They have fees of what, maybe 2 and 20? That's $200,000. There's about 5 or 6 people. It's not viable to have these funds without performance. So until they get larger, they're going to chase performance. That's why they're going to dump. That's why you have to have lockups. And the majority of them are small. Of course, there's the 10 to 20 that are very large, and they generally have a much more different view of long-term investments. And then majority of the larger funds are not actually crypto hedge funds, they're actually venture funds, right? Which have a much longer term, and they're much more invested in the equity, and they get some tokens as a part of their equity tranche. So what you have, if you look at the market structure, is that you have thinly traded tokens, which basically if you start taking profit, they start going down very dramatically. The bid-ask spreads are wide. So you're going to get tremendous volatility. And when these things correct and Bitcoin corrects, everybody, these things are all correlated to each other. So it puts a downward pressure on all of these altcoins and tokens. So the market structure right now is not set up so that there's not going to be a lot of volatility. It's all set up to be very volatile. And institutions are not buying altcoins down to the, the tokens. So they may be supporting Bitcoin, but honestly, when Bitcoin starts to drop, they're not going to buy Bitcoin after a while either. So I think we still have a lot more maturation of this market before we start to reduce the volatility and reduce this dumping situation, even by those institutional investors who promise not to dump.
Yeah, that's like really tricky question, because sometimes it's damage you see like in last bull market, a lot of projects just died because of this, because they do not know how to do treasury management, basic, like skills. And I remember there was like period when on some conference, every second was like, I'm like hedge fund, like 20 mil. Year one later, all of them gone. Yeah, because on the bull market, we think that, yeah, okay, we are trading, but then on the bear market, it's actually validate who is really trading. But mostly you see like all the VC funds, they need to do trading because all the market is volatile. So it's like the era of the hybrid type of the funds, both like we see in the hedge fund. And yeah, but do you think there will be a kind of reconciliation so that there will be like buyout of smaller funds and aggregation to bigger funds?
I think it's just a natural progression of if you can survive, right? It's not going to be regulation, survival of the fittest is how these industries work. So if you have performance and you're able to grow assets and you build a business that's institutionally minded and start to build a program where you get constant investors coming through and you're actually trying to build a real business. If you look at, the experience level of these crypto hedge fund managers, they have very little experience. Of course, much more than the last cycle. It's become much more institutional. But we have a significant problem in this industry because it's an industry missing 2 zeros on your AUM. It's not just 1 zero, right? So it's just not actually large enough yet. So there's going to be these problems, and you have to compensate people to be in this kind of industry, right? So raising assets are also different, because if you look at the hedge fund industry, and I was part of the whole development of that, if you see, you had the fund of funds came in and they start to institutionalize, creating all sorts of metrics. But if you look at the fund of funds in the crypto hedge fund industry, they're tiny and there's so few, they're not actually have no power to do any allocation. So it's a very different industry.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, Joan, it's an interesting point. I think for me, what I really, I'm excited about is I want to see a shift even within the investment market where, we're starting to get a bit more creative and innovative in how we actually give and place investments, especially within the blockchain space. Part of the challenge is also missing the right talent and expertise, which is what Joan was really talking about, with some of the hedge funds. And because they're quite few as well, we're still seeing some challenges around inclusivity again. I go back to the inclusivity discussion where, you've got quite a lot of exciting new projects coming up looking, seeking for investment, right? Especially within this space. And you find that sometimes people on the other side don't really understand the projects. Even on the investment side. So even the investors themselves don't necessarily understand the project, in order for them to kind of consider the project. So I think there's an issue around skill set and talent and expertise, even within the investment circles, and also how we look at actually deploying a capital has to shift with the times. We have to get a bit more creative and innovative. And I think even today we met businesses who are starting to look at that and starting to create a more, digitized environment for even investments, which I think is pretty exciting. And I think will allow more startups and, companies, even growth companies, scaling companies, to be able to access the capital. VC activity in markets are starting to grow. But also, sort of micro level type of financing and lending is actually required in certain markets and not necessarily VC money. So it's really also about understanding what markets that we are operating in. And as people who are quite interested in investing and in more long-term investment and impact-driven sustainable investment, really we have to kind of think a little bit more creative around how we go about doing that as we move post the pandemic.
Yeah, so then we are more than in educational business to educate like how to use like new tools, because people are not educated, and because of lack of this like knowledge and learning curve, they like missing opportunity to invest. Even if there are like a lot of like DeFi project, people do not know how to do this basically. So then it's more about how to educate like people so that they know like what to do. Yeah, just simple like programs like for the mass market, let's say for retail. I'm not speaking about institutional part because it's more professional like fields, but also people missing opportunity. But there are already like technical tools whereas they can like invest like into DeFi projects. Yeah, I think we are almost like 1 minute and yeah, over time. So thank you everyone here, and thank you for people who are still here.
Big round of applause for our panel. Yeah. Well done, well done. We're ending on a high note.
Yeah, we are done, and yeah, thank you also for Agora Group for organizing it. It's really nice to meet people here. Nice event, and thank you, Gordon, for moderating this.
For the aerobics.